Hello everyone, so my name is Nerijus Černiauskas. I'm here teaching at Vilnius University, and today I'm going to talk to you about this economic effects of artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence or AI is probably something you're all familiar with, and economists are also trying to follow it because, well, clearly it will have a huge impact on the way we live. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to just remind us all what AI is, how economists understand it, right? I'm going to look at some opportunities and threats that AI bring and what economists are currently worried about. And I'm also going to see how many of these threats or opportunities have materialized, right? So how of that can we already see in the data, okay? And how much of that is there. And finally, some things that haven't happened yet, but they probably will happen eventually. So it's good to know that our society and our governments are already worried about this, already thinking about this, to make sure all of this is addressed. Okay, so let's go. At the end, I'll also give you a couple of questions. You can talk with your class and hopefully answer that as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so artificial intelligence is a very broad term. And every scientist kind of has a different understanding of it. Economists don't really agree, but what they mostly agree with, it has some kind of a computer system that acts or behaves like humans to a certain extent, right? Now, AI is quite broad, so economists try to kind of characterize things. Economists in general love characterizing things and putting things into buckets. So we actually characterize AI into two types. One of them is analytical AI, right? So these are AI or machine systems that do a very specific task. Like in this case, we have an AI system that has to identify the type of pills on in a factory, right? We see a couple of pills here, and AI identifies this, for example, as a green-white pill, and this one as a white, slightly bluish pill, right? And this can really help the factory workers because it can count the number of pills, it can identify if any pills are bad or good, so it's very useful for monitoring, it speeds up the processes, and no individual really needs to go and count all the pills. AI does it quickly for you, so it's nice and it's very quick. Right? But this is analytical because it does one specific task. What economists are especially excited about are generative AIs. And this is probably something that you're even more familiar with, right? You probably already use ChatGPT, maybe DALL-E made pictures with that, or Bard AI. All of that allows you to type in a sentence and you get content, you get an answer which you can use in different ways depending on the situation, right? So this is very versatile, and clearly this versatility will give you a lot of chance to change the way society works. In fact, economists are so excited about this change that they kind of see AI as what they call a general purpose technology. Now, since we don't really know what the future is going to look like, economists often go back to the past and see what happened before, whether any other types of these general purpose technologies out there. Now think for a bit, and can you think of any other technologies that really changed the way that we live, right? There were a couple. One of them is electricity. When that came about, it allowed people to work 24 hours a day. It allowed shifting people. At the same time came the steam engine, which made physical tasks happen much faster. And it also changed not just the work we did, but also how we do it. Instead of people living in farms, people moved to cities, and they started being urbanized. They're starting having new problems there as well, and new lifetime. After that came computers, also made our calculations much more faster. We could use programs, we could play video games, right? We can write books and print them and copy-paste information very, very quickly, right? So this also changed our lifestyle, and AI might be the third one. Now, I don't have a good picture of AI, but I have this cute hedgehog that's actually made by AI system, right? And it also has all of these possibilities to change the way we think about it. So it's very general purpose technology. The main difference between AI and the previous ones is that not only AI can do very complicated tasks, but it also has the ability to be much more autonomous than previous technologies. So you don't need to for electricity, you just plug in something into a socket and then it works. Here AI, in theory, can develop itself, so it can learn to become smarter over time, something electricity and computers couldn't really do, and can also decide to do work on its own, something that others couldn't do, right? So clearly a lot of potential there, but also a lot of worries. Now, let's start off with the good things. Let's start off with the potential. Now, the main reason why economists are interested in AI is because they hope that it's going to be the thing that brings us back to economic growth. It's going to revive a long period of slow growth. So here I have a graph of three periods from 1970, from 2000 to 2008, and then 2010, 2022, and I have two locations. One is United States, and the other one is OECD. So this is a group of advanced economies, which includes United States, European Union, Japan, and a couple of others. And these figures here on the y-axis, they kind of show you the growth rate, how fast did economies grow in each year. Specifically, it's productivity. So more specifically, it would be how many, let's say you have a single worker. Each worker could do around 1.6% more work in that year. And that happened for 30 years. So every year, a worker could do 1.6% more work, right? So productivity was growing quite fast. Then in 2000, 2008, actually increased even more in the United States to 2%. It was relatively high in other OECD countries as well. But then after the financial crisis in 2009, you can see that growth kind of slowed down. So people were still becoming more productive each year, but they were less productive, not as much productive as before. So productivity, instead of growing by 2%, it just grew by 1.1%. So growth clearly slowed down. And the hope is that because of this AI, our growth will again come back, and we're going to be back to the good old days, which we kind of want to solve all these other problems like aging, like climate change, like poverty, right? But AI also has a lot of threats. And economists realize that. For me, my biggest threat is AI taking over and destroying everyone. Okay? Some economists are also worried about that, but they realize that if this happens, this probably won't happen so quickly, but you still have to watch out for that. But in the shorter term, other worries are dominant. One major one is unemployment. People realize that if machines can automate many of the tasks that humans do, then there will be less need for human labor, right? People will be fired very quickly. Another worry is that some firms will become so powerful and good at using AI that they're going to destroy their competitors, and it will lead to very big firms taking over, right? We don't want a lot of only big firms. We want many firms. We want a lot of society to engage. So there's worries in terms of power or extinction even. There's worries in terms of unemployment, and there's worries about competition. So that's what we know, and probably you already heard before. Now let's see how many of these threats or opportunities have already materialized, right? So economists, what they did is a couple of studies. They looked at firms that use AI and want to see whether indeed they're more productive and how much productive are they. And here we have productivity growth for 1 year for different firms in different countries in different time periods. But on the left we have those firms that were using just analytical AI, right? So, and basically what we do here is we compare a firm that uses some analytical AI, such as the pharmaceutical monitoring system I showed you before, against firms that don't, right? And the firms that do use AI, well, they become more productive by about, let's say, 10%. Other studies show maybe 3%, maybe 5%. So, I mean, there's some interval here, but it's not that big. Some firms are a bit more productive by 10%, others less so, right? Now 10% might seem like a lot, but remember this is a one-time event for a firm. And let's say a firm lives for 10 years, then 10% increase in all the 10 years means on average 1% increase in productivity over the course of a firm's life. 1%, not something to be too excited about. So economists say, okay, there's some scope here, but perhaps not so substantial. However, when economists tested people who were using generative AI here on the right, you can see the effects are much, much, much larger. For example, coding, a programmer using AI to help with coding can increase output by as much as 56%, so 50% faster. So very quick code compilation. Similar others, writers, consultants also benefited a lot for specific tasks, right? So that's good. So that seems good. So we have a lot of potential here for growth. The problem is that only very few firms are currently using AI. On the y-axis, again, we see the percentage or the share of firms that use AI. And in 2024, around 5% of all firms in the United States are expected to actually be using AI. So that's quite a few firms. And it will take quite a lot of time for all the firms most likely to start using it properly, at least, right? Second, we can also compare how AI compares to other general purpose technologies like electricity and PC, and we can see that even though everybody knew that electricity and PCs were important back in the day, it still took about 20 years for these technologies to get adapted. So some of us might think that AI will become present quicker because it's very easy to open up ChatGPT and just run a couple of photos. On the other hand, to do it well, it might take a bit of time. So for the next 20 years, we expect a large growth, but it might not be as quick as some people hope. So some people might say it's already going to happen tomorrow. Maybe it will take a bit of time for firms to actually implement it fully. Right? So that's good. So productivity is getting there slowly, but it has still high hopes. What about employment? Well, the firms that use AI, and when people were asked how you feel about it, most people were quite happy with using it. This is a questionnaire taken again from actually many employers across the OECD countries, many employees, and they said that, well, they're happy with it. Their performance increased. At least 80% people say they did tasks quicker. Many people said they enjoyed it. About 70% said it brought enjoyment to them. Some even said that it increased their mental health, meaning that you don't have to do boring things, you can do fun things instead. And some people even said it increased their physical health. Right? What this means is that instead of counting pills that go around a conveyor for a whole day long, you can actually spend your time doing some other tasks that are more interesting, more active. You don't have to look at a computer screen all day long. So clearly that can have a good impact on your physical and mental health if done properly, right? So some firms are happy embracing this. Now the problem is that usually the firms that are embracing it quickly are also the most courageous firms. They're also the most dynamic firms. And these are the ones that are most willing to change. However, not all firms are willing to change. Not all employees are doing that. That's why what might hold here might not necessarily translate to other firms in the long run, right? And indeed, the studies we have so far, they're a bit inconclusive what might happen in the long run. We don't know. There was one study here by Acemoglu, a famous economist, in 2020, who found that actually the situation is even more complex. Because when he was looking at an individual firm, he saw that indeed there were changes there. Some of the employees got either fired or they had to look for a different work. And it kind of makes sense because let's think about this. You're a programmer, right? And you learn to use AI, you can do the task much quicker, which is good. And if you're the only worker in that firm, that means you as a firm benefit. So in a kind of sense, AI kind of complements labor. It kind of helps you do tasks quicker. So complements a fancy word you'll probably learn, or if you haven't yet learned. So it kind of makes your work quicker. But at the same time, if you are a firm with 20 employees and all of them are programmers and all of them learn to use AI, then you might not have enough projects to fulfill the abilities or of all the 20 workers, right? So you might start off laying some of those people off, or you might ask those programmers to do something else, to be managers, for example, to help with sales, to help with traveling. So it kind of made substitute labor. And indeed, some people were fired or they had to switch tasks. But interestingly, even the people who were fired, they were able to find work in a different firm, right? That's why there were no actually industry effects. When you look at the number of programmers as a whole, there wasn't a lot of change, but there was change within a single firm. So within a firm, people had different tasks allocated to them, or people started working at a different firm altogether, right? Also, AI has some, because of this, of course, some works may be the case that some jobs are so well automated that they became destroyed. On the other hand, there's always the possibility that new jobs will come about because of AI. So you have people teaching others to use AI, or maybe they can just use their time saved in AI to do something else. And throughout history, we definitely see this, that some tasks have been forgotten while new ones were introduced. We had farmers back in the day, which everyone was working in the fields. But after some time, we had the electricity, we had the steam engine, which allowed a lot of these workers to move to cities to work in large factories. during the Industrial Revolution and further on. Later on, these factories also became so automated that there was no need for such high labor. Moved to service sector. So we had the retail sector, we had the transportation sector, financial sector, even IT sector, right? And now the service sector is also getting partly automated. You know, we have the scanners in the retail or self-checkouts. So it might be that people end up moving somewhere further on, let's say to nursing or to healthcare, where it's very hard to automate these tasks, right? So tasks definitely will change as they have, but people still have been employed throughout this period, at least the people who are willing to change and adapt, right? Now let's look at competition. So this chart shows you a couple of things here, so let me just go slowly through it. First of all, it shows you the percentage of all jobs that are posted online when people are looking for work, and the percentage of them that are AI jobs. And as you can see, only 3% of all the jobs out there are AI jobs. So still, most jobs don't require AI. Furthermore, it really differs across the industry. For example, information and finance, so IT and finance, they want quite a lot of AI specialists, professional services, manufacturing as well. But others, for example, arts and healthcare, they don't really need AI specialists, at least at the moment, right? So there's a lot of variation across the industry. But also, there's a lot of variation across the type of employers. So here we have two employers. We have the top AI, so the big firms, think Amazon, think Meta, think Google, which really employ a vast number of AI specialists, and then all other firms that also employ AI. And as you can see, in the case of information, for example, Google or the top 4 firms pretty much get half of the AI specialists, right? This actually happens in finance as well, even more so in agriculture. So there's already a lot of market concentration. Already some firms are becoming very big, absorbing all the best talent, making it difficult, perhaps very difficult for other firms to compete. Right? So already there's something going on here in terms of competition, which governments aren't very happy. This is happening across industries and firms within the country, but it's also happening across countries. Here, for example, we see how much investment is going into firms, and more importantly, which countries are the ones that are doing investment. And as you can see, since 2012, the industry or investment has boomed with more and more investment coming in. It's a $800 billion industry right now. But the vast majority of this investment, about half, is coming from the United States, around a third from China, leaving a little fraction left for the other countries. So you can see European Union as a whole, looking quite weak here. We have all the rest of the countries, which includes, of course, Japan, Israel, other big countries as well, Australia, but all of them together aren't, with the European Union too, aren't as much as China. So we already have a lot of international concentration. And economists are also worried about that might cause a lot of inequalities going forward. Okay, so what are we doing to help? Well, there's a couple of things governments are doing, there's a couple of things we can do. The one thing that all countries are trying to do is at least have some kind of principles, some kind of standards that you have to do when inventing an AI and when using it to make sure that it doesn't take over the world, okay? Some of these are codified in OECD AI principles. There's also this Hiroshima AI process. They kind of talk about things that should be there. For example, when making AI, you should make sure it helps the economy grow. It makes sure you focus humans, so the idea is to make humans do tasks quicker, not to replace humans completely. Make sure it's possible to trace and explain what AI is telling you, so you don't accidentally end up destroying everything or ruining products. Make sure it's safe, and make sure you know who's accountable. So you probably all heard the big debate about self-driving cars, where you don't know who's responsible. Is it the driver? Is it the AI system? Is it the car? Is it the infrastructure people? So you have to make sure you know who's responsible for anything like that. So, and this is nice because if all countries agree, all countries can follow. Plus, governments in different countries are also doing these several things. So, in Lithuania, in European Union, in America, we have competition authorities that make sure that no firm is too big or too powerful to get all the resources and to charge very high prices to customers. So we want to make sure that this doesn't happen. We already saw a bit of that happening, so we want to make sure it doesn't go further. Governments also have a lot of redistribution policies. Things like taxation and things like subsidies, unemployment benefits, to make sure that those who are doing very well, we kind of slow them down a bit, maybe tax them a bit more because they're able to pay, and give them to the people who are maybe slower to adapt, maybe they're already too old to adapt to learn new things, maybe they need specific equipment to help them. So we have a lot of these policies, and every country is experimenting, seeing which ones work best. Finally, a lot of resources are going to retraining to make sure that workers and individuals are able to adapt to these changes. But none of this really means anything if we ourselves don't do a lot. We have to keep learning new things, keep experimenting, and making sure we follow what's going on there. Okay? So just a quick summary then. What happened is we know AI, economists know that AI has a big potential for growth, but so far not so many firms are using it. So we expect this to improve, to grow. We also know that AI does have a lot of threats to unemployment. Historically, it hasn't been the case. So far, we don't see it, but we still should keep in mind. There's also a lot of problems to competition. We have to make sure that AI doesn't get concentrated in a few firms. And importantly for ourselves, just make sure we're on our toes, make sure we know what's going on, and make sure we are not the ones that actually create the all-powerful AI that ends up destroying everything, okay? So now a couple of questions for you. If you want, have a think if there's any other opportunities or threats that AI brings which I have not covered. Maybe you heard about something, maybe you can think of something as well. Maybe you can also think of some examples of jobs that became extinct. So they were important jobs in the past, but because of technological change they become useless, redundant, or maybe vice versa, some new jobs that came about which didn't exist before. Okay? Also have a think, maybe if unemployment does start rising, if people can't find work because of AI, what can we do to help them? And should we do anything to help them, right? And finally, and most importantly, just think to yourself, do you think that, are you excited about AI, or are you someone that's a bit worried of AI? And I want to know why is that, all right? So tell me why, and have a think here, okay? So to wrap up, thank you so much for listening. We know that AI has a lot of good things, and let's hope it's going to lead us to a very nice world, right? But AI can also be a very Terminator-like world, right? And we don't want that. Interestingly, the pictures on the right is done by humans, and the one on the left is done by AI. And judging from a couple of things here and here and here and here, we see that humans still have a lot that AI can't yet deliver. So let's hope we can keep on using the best of humanity that we have.